Ready?
Yeah.
What's love got to do with it? What's love but a second-hand emotion? A little girl from Tennessee whose parents are sharecroppers starts out with the name Anime and becomes the iconic Tina Turner. Tina is a documentary that is broken up into 5 parts. Every part is a different section of her life and starts out a different way and highlights some of the things that she's gone through in her life. The movie starts out kind of telling you a little bit about how she was famous initially in the Ike and Tina Turner band, and then it segues into how she kind of went through some tough times, very difficult and very trying, abusive times with Ike Turner, how she grew in her own personal kind of spirit and strength and how she found her strength. And it concludes basically with how she had to reinvent herself and went from being a Las Vegas personality and show person to becoming the iconic Tina Turner that grew to fame in the late 80s and early 90s. Aaron, what'd you think when I told you we're gonna watch Tina? I know it's not something that usually catches your eye, but I wanted to see what
Yeah.
you thought of her life story and how it's presented.
We're actually, my wife and I are in a documentary phase right now, watching all kinds of documentaries. This one didn't really catch my eye. I love Tina Turner's music. I own a lot of her CDs and stuff, but I wasn't really interested in her backstory. It didn't, I knew nothing about her backstory other than she was married to Ike, and I think everybody knew that. But I watched it,
Mhm.
and it kept my attention. It was really well done. Here's what I'll say about the documentary. I think they spent a little bit too much time on part one, talking about her and Ike. I mean, they methodically go through their history on how they met, what happened, what they went through. And I thought it could have been a little condensed in that part because it's the later stuff. It's when she becomes liberated where things get a lot more interesting. But I think it went on too long. And I think it drug the first part of the documentary down a little bit. They made it more about him than it was about her. And they kept talking about him and talking about him. And as she makes the point in the documentary, she came out with that information about what happened to her. I think it was in the late 80s, early 90s,
Mm-hmm.
so that it would never be talked about again.
Mm-hmm.
And it had the opposite effect. And it really upset her to a degree until she learned to embrace it. And they talk about all that in the documentary. She was able to help countless people out there with her story.
Mm-hmm.
So it had some unintended consequences.
Mm-hmm.
She did not like being in the limelight in that regard. She wanted the attention on being Tina Turner. And in fact, they make the point in the film that when Ike takes her to court and they get divorced,
Mm-hmm.
she doesn't want any of his money. She wants none of the revenue, nothing. The only thing she wants to keep is her name
Right.
because that's what she was known by. And that's how she lived the rest of her life, becoming Tina Turner. And we got the best of it, when we were kids.
Right.
And
Right.
the one thing in the documentary I didn't like, though, and I'll tell you right now, is the fact that they could show clips from Thunderdome,
Mm-hmm.
but they couldn't play the music because the studio owns the music. And I'm like, that's her best song. Like, that is the best song she's done.
That's one of your favorite Tina Turner songs. That's the
Yeah.
Thunderdome stuff.
So
Huh?
I was disappointed that she couldn't play the song, and they didn't even do a hint of that song
No.
in the documentary, and it's because it's not owned by them.
Yeah.
But that's unfortunate. But I really enjoyed this. What were your thoughts on it?
Well, for me, like in Turner's story starts with "What's Love Got to Do with It," where Angela Bassett and Lawrence Fishburne plays Ike and Tina Turner. That's how I was kind of introduced into her story, and that was a great movie, well acted. They both did a great job, and that was my first kind of introduction to who Tina Turner actually was and what she'd been through. This documentary is different than that because it really opens you up to her kind of just her story and her perspective and what she's gone through. And yeah, it starts with Ike and Tina. I didn't have a problem at the beginning of the movie because that's how she became famous in the first place. And it was amazing, like that she really loved this guy. She really loved Ike Turner, even though he put her through hell. I mean, honestly, the way that she describes a lot of the abuse is just,
and it is graphic.
horrible. I mean, the things that he did to her were
people
horrible.
need to know it's graphic.
Yeah,
it's very graphic. In the language, not obviously.
No, right. And what happened and her description of what happened. But, what I most enjoyed about the documentary and why I think it was so highly regarded is Tina Turner has a courage. And that's what helps, besides her talent, that's what draws people to her. Her courage to be able to go ahead and speak about the abuses that she's gone through and the abuse that she took really allowed other people, and especially women, to kind of have someone else explain it and have someone else tell that these horrors that she had gone through, that they had gone through the same time. So it kind of she was able to be stronger by admitting her greatest weakness. And that, is really, what makes her an icon, is that, yes, her music is great. There's a lot of great artists who have been around through time, but her opening up and being able to do that is just amazing to me. And I think that that's something that women really it resonates with them, because, guys, we go through tough stuff, but women, sometimes when they have the courage to speak up about something that's been done wrong to them, it just, I believe lots of times women, my understanding of women is that, lots of times they'll just bury that deep inside. And when she opened up about it, it just released the floodgates of millions of other women that have been in similar situations. And it kind of gave them hope. And they were able to look at Tina Turner as an inspiration and go, look, you know what? Some bad things have happened to you. You've dealt with some horrible people in your life, and her parents left her as a kid. And look what I've become, and look what you can become. And I really like that aspect of the story and the documentary that wasn't really touched on in any other documentaries or films about Tina Turner. What do you think kind of overall about this movie?
I really enjoyed it. I thought it was fantastic. It doesn't get a movie score. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely a film. It wasn't there just for entertainment. It was obviously there to tell her story, and a story that a lot of people aren't aware of. So I was enthralled from beginning to end, and it was really well done. So my final score on this one, I'd give it an 8 out of 10.
All right. And I have to agree with you. The same thing. I didn't give it a movie score either. It's definitely a film. It's definitely something to make you reflect and allow people a little insight into someone who maybe they never really knew their backstory. And like I said, just the courage and strength he has to do that. I mean, as tough as I think I am, to go down and, bare my soul like that and say, hey, here's the worst thing that happened to me, or here's the worst thing that I've done. I don't care if you're a man or a woman. That, to me, that's something that's just amazing. And so I give it an 8 as well. All right. So thank you guys. All of you guys have been watching and listening on Spotify, Facebook, Audible, and especially YouTube. Make sure you subscribe down below. We want to thank you guys for watching and listening throughout. And we'll see you guys next week. I'm Lamont Lovejoy.
I'm Aaron Fisher.
See you then.